If I only had the right staff. If I only had the right staff, man, would my profits grow like crazy. That's the myth we're going to talk about today. My name's Sean. This is Growth Profits. Stay with us. Hi, folks. I'm Sean Crabtree.
And I'm Cameron Bailey.
We don't want to change the way you do business.
We want to change the way you're thinking about your business.
We want you to have better results, happier clients, and make more money.
Let's get it started.
Welcome back. As you know, my name is Sean. This show is Growth Profits. We come to you every single week talking about ways for you to have, as you already know, happier clients, better results, making more money, and the last part of this is the most important, enjoying the ride. We want you to be able to enjoy this journey that you're on and this thing that you call your career for a very long time and eliminate burnout. Today, what the heck is it we're talking about today? We're talking about this. If I only had the right staff, man, Sean, I could grow exponentially. You know what? This is one of the biggest myths that I've heard for the last 22 years. If I only had the right staff. And I'll tell you a story about this. Mr. Producer, what are we looking at here? This is the newly renovated Crabtree group. Okay, that's pretty cool. And why is it black and white?
We're adding effect.
Because we're adding effect. Mr. Producer says we're adding effect. So it's like the Andy Griffith Show or something.
Yeah,
maybe.
Mayberry.
Except it's Mayberry. There you go. So only complete with somebody's car in the an Altima in the shot. Okay. So there you go. I like it though, Mr. Producer. That's really cool. So what we're talking about here is if I only had the right staff. Again, this is one of the things that I've heard for the last 22 years. Here's a great story. I've operated from this belief forever in my business career that, you know what? People are people, and everybody wants to do a great job. Everybody wants to be on board. Everybody wants to be accomplished. Everybody wants to hit results. If they're not hitting results, then probably you ought to take a look at your leadership. And we're going to talk about that in just a second. I want to tell you a story, and I want to tell you 2 or 3 things that you can do to be able to operate from that belief so that you can make an impact in your business and grow your profitability. So I can't tell you how many times this story I'm about to tell you has played out again and again and again and again. But this example is a really good example. So years ago, I had a couple of different clients, and in one business, the culture was very much lacking leadership. There were a couple of people on the team who were not living up to expectations. As I said, leadership was really not there. Had another team down the road in a different business where there was lots of leadership. The person who owned the business absolutely understood the concept of open communication. He understood the fact that if I'm going to be successful, then the people around me are assets. The people on my team are assets. I have to invest in them just like I'm investing in monetarily in my business. I have to invest in them just like I'm investing in myself. And I'm going to treat them like people, not like employees. So here's the two opposing, let's call John over here, who is the great leader. You like that, Mr. Producer? We got John over here, who is a really good leader. And we got Bob over here on the other hand, who has a culture where there's not a whole lot of leadership. Frankly, the attitude was, I'm the boss, you do what you're told. And there were several people on the team. So these two businesses, Bob and John, were just a few miles apart from each other. Long story short, something happened with Bob, and a couple people on the team left. John over here is looking to expand his business, and one person for Bob's team applies for a job opening in John's business. John immediately saw opportunity in this person. Bob's attitude was, when these two people left, good riddance. They were not the right people anyway. I'm just looking, if I just had the right people, these people suck. If I just had the right people, I could grow my business. John saw the opportunity in one of the people who applied for this business, for this position in his office. Hired this person. She became the greatest asset on his team. Now, what's the difference? Bob looked at her as horrible. She's not meeting expectations. Terrible, whatever. John is seeing opportunity. And when he hired her, she flourished. And over the next 8 years became the single most valuable player on that team. Is it really about the player? Or is it about the culture that the leader exhibits? My experience over the many years I've been doing this is, it is not about the people. It is 100% absolutely about the leadership or lack thereof and the culture or lack thereof. I would tell you this, people are people and most people want to be on board. Again, as I said a moment ago, most people want to do a good job. If they're not showing up the way that you think they should show up, then instead of pointing the finger at that person, point the finger at yourself. And we're going to talk about some things that you can do about that here in just a second. But I can tell you this. If you don't get the conversation that we're having right now, if you don't get this, then you're going to fall into that trap of those percentage of entrepreneurs who spend the rest of your career looking for the right staff. And you know these people. They've got turnover. Maybe it's not turnover once a month. Maybe it's turnover every couple of years. But their attitude is big me, little staff. These people don't do what they're supposed to do, always pointing the fingers. And so the entire career is built around looking for the right staff. Right staff doesn't exist. Your job is to find somebody who fits the most criteria that you possibly can and build them into the rock star player that they can be. And you got to operate from that belief that I said a moment ago. Most everybody wants to be great. They're just waiting for you as a leader to show them how to be that. So, how do you do it? There's 3 big things that I can tell you that you need to do. Number 1, most team members are not showing up because the leader is not communicating the right things and communicating the wrong things. What do I mean by that? Here's what I mean. Most people are not showing up on a team the way they could show up on a team because what's happening is the leadership is having expectations not be met, but they're not communicating about the fact that those expectations are not being met. So they're not communicating about the things that they should be communicating about, and they're communicating about the things that they should not be communicating about. What do I mean by that? They're telling people what to do. They're telling people what to do. Big me, little you. I'm going to tell you what to do. I'm the boss. You don't think, do what I say, right? And then the expectation is not clearly communicated. The leadership is communicating things that they shouldn't and not communicating things that they should. So what do you need to take from that? Here's what you need to do. Number 1, what you got to do is set the direction. As the leader, your job is not to tell people what to do. It's to set the direction and repeat that direction over and over and over and over and over and over again as often as possible. And communicate about things. When you see opportunities, don't tell people what to do. Help them understand how to think like you. Remember, if you could be successful on your own, you wouldn't need these people. Your greatest asset is your team. Your greatest asset is your team. You have to invest time, energy. You have to invest communication in them. But telling them what to do and expecting them to be on board with you is not going to work. So instead of that, you communicate the direction often, repeat it often, right? And then you communicate around the people so that they get wind of where you're trying to go. And then more and more, give them more responsibility and allow them to be on board with decision making. You're not going to turn the checkbook loose. We're not talking about that. We're talking about having the people on your team see themselves as partners in your business rather than seeing you as the boss. And I'm here simply to do what I'm told, not to even think at all, but just to do what I'm told. A great leader communicates not what to do, but where it is that we're trying to go, and invites the creativity to come out. So the most important thing is communicate the direction and communicate it often. The next thing you got to do is this. Do not withhold communication. When you see opportunities for expectations that are not being met, you got to communicate that. How in the world can you communicate that? Well, here's what you got to do. Come from a place in your head that most everybody wants to be on board. So you're not coming to somebody and telling them how bad this was, right? You're coming from a place in your head that, hey, I understand this player wants to be great. This player on my team wants to be the very best they can be. So when something didn't go right, that's the opportunity for me not to withhold that communication, but to bring it to that person and help them understand how this thing that didn't happen or did happen is not supporting where it is that we're trying to go. Remember, this is not an employee you tell them what to do. This is somebody who is a partner in your business. That's what should give you, with that belief in your head, the permission, for lack of a better word, to be able to communicate directly with that person. Remember, most everybody wants to be on board, and most everybody wants to be a part of where it is that you're trying to go. I would throw this in there as well. There are duds out there. I would submit that the people who are, actively not wanting to be on board, who don't want to be a part of it, those are very, very small percentages. We're not talking about most people. We're talking about a very small percentage of those people. And I would submit that even most cases within that percentage, there's an opportunity for coaching and leadership that can bring that person out and help them be the best they can be. However, if you've got some people who are in that percentage who are not on board, your job is to communicate the expectations, support that person as much as possible, and allow them to weed themselves out. If you're not approaching it from that standpoint, you're missing the opportunity with the other people on your team. If you don't lead in a way that allows that person to weed themselves out by how you're communicating, and you just come in and tell that person to leave, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. That needs to happen in some cases. But you're still missing the opportunity from a coaching standpoint. Instead, set the expectation, communicate to that expectation, and then hold that person accountable for making their own decision as to whether or not they want to be here or be gone. And that will serve you in the long term. So what are we talking about? We're talking about this idea that if I just had the right staff, man, I could grow this thing like crazy. You know what? Here's the bottom line. I said a moment ago, people are people, and most everybody is the right person. If they're not showing up in the way that they need to show up, instead of pointing the finger at them, look at yourself and ask yourself, how is it that I need to lead differently? And some things we talked about is, number one, you got to communicate about the things that you should communicate about. And you can't not communicate about the things that you shouldn't communicate about. In other words, you can't withhold communication. If expectations are not met, you've got to be the one who's communicating directly at it. And you've got to set the direction and communicate that direction often. That is your job as a leader. And like it or not, if you own the business, you are by definition the leader. So if people are not showing up, get clear about it. If they're not showing up, it's not their fault. The people on your team are showing up exactly the way they're showing up for one reason and one reason only. It's the expectation that you've set, and it's what you've allowed. So instead of pointing the finger at them, and instead of going on a lifetime, never-ending search for the right staff, instead, look at yourself. Figure out what is it you're communicating, what is it you're withholding, change that up. Communicate your direction again and again and again. And communicate that often, over and over, so that the people on your team know where they're trying to go. Don't tell your people what to do. Instead, let them catch hold of where you're trying to go, and then give them responsibility and a voice so that they can be partners in your business rather than employees. At the end of the day, that's not only going to put you in a position to have profitability in a growth mode. You know what? It's going to allow you to enjoy the ride. There's no joy on earth if you are in a constant, never-ending, career-long search for the right person, because you're going to find out they don't exist. People are people. Your job is to make them rock stars by investing in them just as you invest in yourself and the other parts of your business. If you're worried about, let me just say this one more thing. If you're worried about communication, one of the things I hear is, I've got to have the right staff who's okay to handle communication. Listen, that's utter bunk, man. That is total BS. They will show up how you expect them to show up. Period. That's it. Your job is to communicate those expectations. If you are withholding communication because you're afraid that somebody's not strong enough to handle communication, then look at yourself and go, how you communicate it is really important. If you're coming across beating somebody over the head, well, that's not going to work. However, you have got to cultivate open communication, or the people around you can never be partners in your business. At best, they can only be employees. And then it's up to you to tell them what to do. And then you're going to be in the same search over and over and over again. You with me on this, Mr. Producer? Anything you need to add?
No, you got it.
I mean, you're pretty good with it, with what I'm saying here.
Oh, yeah. I'm good.
Mr. Producer's not going to add anything except the black and white effect.
That's the best part about it.
That is the best part about it. So at the end of the day, my challenge to you is this: operate from this belief. Get out of the career-long search for the right people. Operate from this belief. People are people, and they're going to show up exactly the way you expect them to show up. And most people want to be on board, and most people want to be a part of where it is that you're trying to go. Your job is to communicate it that direction over and over again. Your job is not to withhold communication, and your job is to operate from that belief at all moments. At the end of the day, that's what's going to get you happier clients, better results, certainly making more money. But it's going to allow you and your team to enjoy the ride. And that's what it is that I want for you. And that's why we come to you every single week. If you need help or support in this area, it's what we do all day long. Reach out to us. Happy to support you in any way that we can. This has been Growth Profits. Hope you have a great week. We'll see you next week. Same time, same channel.